You're welcome back. Time for business now. And Emmanuel Abuaje, we are I beg your pardon. I guess I'm so.
Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, I'm sure you saw the interchange, the story that Maxwell Agbagba filed about the interchange. Work is progressing,
Very
steadily on it.
It's
really spectacular.
The landscape of
it is wonderful, and my only wish is that we maintain it so it looks as new as it does look right now in about 10-20 years.
I really hope it really serves the purpose for which it was constructed by easing traffic and congestion, and the fact that businesses around, the micro businesses, also do not, hang around.
Yeah, you can see the shot of the interchange.
Very beautiful.
Yeah,
very beautiful
on your
indeed.
screens.
And
anyway.
It's a drone shot.
It is. Anyway, so what's in business?
Well, in business, some commercial banks have withdrawn their guarantees for licensed buying companies for the purchase of cocoa.
All right, give us the details.
All right, so thank you very much for joining me on business. Some commercial banks have withdrawn guarantees extended to licensed cocoa buying companies to aid the purchases of cocoa beans. But how could this development affect the entire cocoa industry? There's more in the following report.
Joy Business is learning that some of the banks took the action following the collapse of one of the giants in the industry. This was basically due to the inability of that company to pay back the credit extended to it by some commercial banks in the country. Sources say the decision to cut credit to the sector made it difficult for most of the licensed buying companies to pre-finance cocoa purchases. This is due to Cocoa Board's insistence that every licensed buying company provides guarantee before they can secure part of the $1.8 billion available for cocoa purchase. Some of the companies fear this could result in smuggling of cocoa beans to neighboring Ivory Coast, which could affect the country's overall target of about 900,000 tons of cocoa by the end of the new crop season. Some also fear that it could lead to the collapse of some licensed buying companies, as most of them are now struggling to be in business. But Cocoa Board is insisting the new arrangement is to prevent a situation where some of the companies don't pay back the loan on time, whilst others divert it to other areas.
Now, concerns of Ghana losing revenue from crude production on the Twineboa, Enyira, and Ntome, also known as Tenfield, are being allayed. The Ghana Revenue Authority says it has put in place the necessary infrastructure to ensure the state gets the required revenue from the country's oil fields. Commissioner General George Blankson says there is no cause for alarm. In an interview with Joy Business, he said the FPSO John Atta Mills has addressed this revenue leakage concern.
With the fiscal monitoring of exports, and which form the basis for calculation of tax, we have electronic seals on all the meters and also the valves through which we have the product flowing into the export vessels. And for that reason, we also have 24-hour presence on the vessel, on the FPSO here. And the young man who is here 24 hours, of course we keep changing him. After a few days, he will go, we bring in another person, but we ensure that we have 24-hour presence on this vessel to monitor production and exports, and therefore to secure the taxes that are due on the products. How are you
able to independently verify every liter of volume that goes out of this vessel?
As I have indicated, we have electronic seals on the valves through which the product flows. At various points, we have all these seals. So every drop of oil that goes into the valves, goes through the valves, will be registered. And even from the head office, on the screen, we can monitor 0.001 of a liter has gone into the export pipes that go into the export vessels. This is the kind of system we have. So we are constantly monitoring how much oil flows out for exports.
Meanwhile, the country's second major hydrocarbon development, the Twineboa, Enyira, and Ntome 10, is said to have exported some significant volumes of crude since it began commercial production. The field, since August this year, has exported 1.65 million barrels of crude. But is the TEN field living up to its expectation as a major alternative of crude oil production to Tullow? George Rafi tells us more.
Some analysts, looking at the volumes of crude that has been exported so far, the TEN field could indeed help improve the fortunes of Tullow in terms of the daily production of crude exported from the country's oil fields and its profit. The field is said to hold about 2 billion barrels of crude reserves. It started commercial production in August with an initial daily production of 23,000 barrels of crude and is expected to increase to 50,000 barrels a day before the end of this year. Some industry watchers are of the view that the TEN field has come on time to help stabilize the amount of crude exported, looking at the current challenges with the Jubilee field, which was even threatening oil production and the country's power generation. Tullow yesterday announced that it is reducing the amount of gas it exports to the Atuabo plant as it carries out some works on the equipment on the FPSO used in extracting crude from the seabed. This is part of a grand plan to finally correct the current problems with the turret bearing on the FPSO, which will result in some shutdowns this year and possibly early part of next year. Chief Executive of Tullow, Aiden Havey, tells Joy Business these works will help address all the problems with the Jubilee FPSO.
Well, Jubilee's, we've pretty well nailed down the problem in Jubilee, and we have a solution in place and we're working on that. So that's pretty well in hand now, and Jubilee's producing pretty well with the interim measures that we have in place, and we should have the first section of putting the FPSO on a fixed heading done by the end of this year. So it's pretty well on track.
Yeah. And what timelines are you giving to yourself in terms of completing work on the Jubilee?
Well, the main stabilising of the FPSO will be done in the fourth quarter of this year, and then next year we'll fix that. We'll permanently moor it in a fixed position, and then the cam buoy, which we'll put in, is probably in 2018. But by probably around June of next year, Jubilee will be back to full production.
For Tullow, it has put in place measures to ensure that the current problems with the Jubilee FPSO, which affected volumes of crude exported, power generation in Ghana, and decline in revenue to the state, become a thing of the past when TEN hit full production, whilst correcting the current problems with the Jubilee FPSO.
Away from petroleum, Rwanda has come up tops as best place for doing business. That's according to the World Bank, IMF, and the World Economic Forum report, which also ranked the East African country as one of the most reformed economies in Africa. The recent World Bank Doing Business report placed it as the second best place to do business in Africa and 56th in the world to do business. Today, the country can boast of a viable national carrier with a strong presence in Eastern Africa. So what is doing the trick for a country that came out of a ruthless civil war but is now described as a rising economic powerhouse of Africa? George Rafi, again, caught up with Finance Minister of Rwanda, Claver Gatete, who shared his thoughts.
The biggest trick is leadership. The leadership that is dedicated, the leadership that's more focused, that understands the importance of governance, good governance, macroeconomic stability, and creating a good conducive environment for business. And of course, making sure that we create a system, an economy that is resistant, that is resilient to any kind of shocks, whether from internal or external world. So I would say the trick is leadership.
Any lessons for us? I mean, Ghana and even other countries in West Africa, what can we draw from you to also help us? Because we've not had our challenges doing business reports and all those things.
Leadership that is more focused, not only on planning, but also on implementation.
One of Ghana's pioneer photographers, James Bano, has asked government to institute policies to stimulate growth in the local photography industry. He believes photography is vital in promoting Ghana's tourism industry and attracting foreign investors. Darrell Kwao has more.
The 87-year-old photographer, who was recently honored by the state, showcasing some of his works, He was Ghana's first full-time newspaper photographer in the 1950s and is credited with introducing color processing to Ghana in the 70s. Speaking to Joy Business as he paid a visit to the offices of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, James Bano admitted a lot has changed about the photography industry here in Ghana.
I think with the emergence of digital photography, things have changed a bit. I don't know whether the professional photographer is losing work or not, but as I said, if you have your education and you have your background, you don't fear competition. You know what you're doing, you know what you can do, and you go ahead.
Elsewhere, professional photography is very lucrative business, not just for the photographers, but also economically beneficial to the countries too. Mr. Bano believes the country can also benefit if it increases investments in the industry.
Nice, attractive, artistic presentation of your product will attract anybody. And it shows even the people who are working on the plant, how smart they are, how dressed they are, how quickly they are, the attractiveness will attract somebody to say, oh yes, if I come to Ghana, I bring my business to Ghana, there are people who can manage it well. Using photography to attract business is more than just speaking words. You show it visually. And I think there are some plans that we can put into action to promote that side of photography.
Mr. Bano also urged Ghanaian photographers to remain committed to their work.
We have that chance to represent agencies taking photographs rather than sending photographers overseas to come and take pictures for us.
And on that note, we wrap up business for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji Riafe. For more business news, log on to myjoyonline.com.